Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Katie Robbert, co-founder and CEO of Trust Insights. She's an authority on compliance, governance, change management, agile methodologies, and dealing with high stakes, no mistakes data. As the CEO, she oversees the growth of the company, manages operations and product commercializations, and sets overall strategy. Her expertise includes strategic planning, marketing operations management, organizational behavior, and market research and analysis. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I am very excited to have you on the show because we haven't done a ton within your industry before. And so I think it'll be a really great conversation just to bring someone on that we necessarily haven't had in this space yet. So for our listeners, Katie's very extensive and impressive bio will be in the show notes. But Katie, I'd love to start off this episode by giving you the opportunity to share with our listeners who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, Ashley, I'm the co-founder of Trust Insights, and so we are a marketing and management consultancy. A lot of what we do is helping people work through their AI implementation or tech stack implementation, help them sort out their marketing planning, a lot of their data, a lot of data governance, and my expertise has always been more on the organizational behavior side. And I'm seeing a lot more of a call for that, especially with AI implementation, trying to figure out where people fit, how to structure teams, what kind of roles to hire for. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing right now. Um, Personally, I love being outside. I love hiking, hanging out with my dog, just kind of keeping it very non technical when I'm not working.
I love that. It's nice to have a break from the day-to-day stuff and give
Yeah.
yourself a break to just be able to kind of let your brain charge and reset after all the important work that you do.
Hmm. Exactly.
And so with that, I'd love to hear or dive a little bit more further into your career history leading up to Trust Insights. So what was it that you did prior to that, and what led you to co-founding Trust Insights today?
So it's funny. My career history is I'm sure you get this a lot. It's not a straight line. And so I actually went to school. I have a film degree from what was it back in my day, Fitchburg State College, and is now, I believe, Fitchburg State University, which is very fancy. But so I have a film degree from Fitchburg State, and then I worked in production in Boston for a little while. This was prior to the film industry really making its way to the East Coast. Everything was really still West Coast based at the time, and even in New York. And I couldn't afford to move to either one. So unfortunately, it was a bit short lived, and I had to go get a real paying job. I kind of had to leave casting and production um, for the time being. I always thought I would go back to it, but I never really did. Things sort of happened. So I ended up getting a job working as a project assistant on clinical trials. And so I actually spent the majority of my career up until recently working on clinical trials for the use and abuse of opiates and stimulants, and then transitioning that into a commercial product for substance abuse counselors. That's where I really learned how the software development lifecycle works, the project lifecycle, sales and marketing. I was able to really understand all of those different departments. When I moved on from that product manager role, which is what I had transitioned into, I started working at a PR agency of all places. But what I was doing was I was running the marketing technology team. So I was the director of the MarTech team under who is now my co-founder, Chris Penn. He was the VP of the MarTech team. I was the director. And when that agency decided to kind of move in a direction that was away from the marketing technology that we were working on, Chris and I decided to spin off our own company, which is what we now know as Trust Insights. And we actually also flipped roles because anyone who knows him knows that he's not the best at being organized and a manager. And I was running his team. So it was an easy transition for me to take over as CEO and for him to stay focused in his lane as a data scientist.
So interesting that you started off with film and being able to focus on that. And now look at where you are today. And especially too with the career that you had in clinical trials. With that, I'm curious, were you interested in the clinical trial route and that's why you explored it? Or was it something that just kind of came to you and you're like, okay, I guess I'll just try this and see where this path takes me?
It was really more of a let's just try this. I don't think I really knew what I was getting into, but what I did know was that I was someone who thrived in an environment where I needed to be highly organized and really meticulous and detail oriented and very operational. And I think that's the thing that's really carried me through. That's the thread that's been through my entire career. And so, in working with the clinical trials, I learned a lot about data governance, privacy, security. All of those pieces now, as we're in the AI space, are still very relevant. And having a really good working foundational knowledge of what true data governance means has been able to set me and our clients up for success because I can explain it to them in a way that they're like, oh, now I understand why I probably shouldn't put my protected health information into an open AI model.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to think about, especially like you said, with AI only going to get bigger and more robust as we go on. It's really interesting to think about how you can support clients and help protect them too, in that sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of background information that has to happen first. And that's a lot of the work that we do, that I do specifically, is helping people understand how to put the plan together before you get to the shiny object. And so I don't think it matters at this point what industry you're in. You've heard of AI and you
Mhm.
know that AI is, taking things over and doing things. And so a lot of what my goal is to help people get set up for success, not just with the technology itself, but with their processes, with their teams, with their business goals. And so that's the kind of thing that really never goes out of style. And that's all the foundational stuff that I've learned throughout the course of my career.
I love that. And if you don't mind, I'd love to hear kind of like an example of types of projects that you might support clients with or what that might look like for you and how you can support them in that sense.
A lot of our clients come to us and start the conversation and say, I want to disrupt my agency with AI. I want to start using AI. And these are, these kinds of clients kind of vary in their maturity in terms of where they are in their AI journey. So sometimes you have a really large enterprise size client who knows AI is a thing, but their processes are so antiquated and really bogged down with inefficiencies that AI really isn't even on their roadmap. So helping them figure out where the real roadblocks are and get to a better place from a process standpoint before introducing AI. And then you have clients who they've dedicated time and resources to research and development and experimentation with AI. So then it's a matter of, okay, great, you've got your hands in it. Now let's refocus it, pull you back in, and figure out what we can actually do with it that should really see the light of day that you can then bring to your clients.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that you kind of, it sounds like, help clients with both ends of the spectrum. Clients who haven't even really introduced AI to their company and aren't quite ready for it yet, but then also clients who have done a lot of the legwork themselves already and they're like, okay, we've plateaued. We need someone to come in and really help us go to that next level because we've done what we can by ourselves so far.
That's exactly it. A lot of it's interesting. It's sort of like a lesson for life in general. We only know as much as we know. And so having the awareness to be able to ask for help is a huge superpower. And that's what a lot of these companies are doing is they have the awareness to say we know a lot, but we only know within the boundaries of our own company. So having someone from the outside come in, not necessarily to do things and fix things, but just to even help facilitate conversations and give a objective outside perspective really helps them understand, oh, okay, this is what we were trying to do. And then they're the ones who can be the superheroes, and you have somebody else who's coming in and saying, okay, this, I'm seeing all the things that you're doing, let me help you put the pieces together.
Yes, absolutely. And one piece that I want to go in a little bit further on that you specialize in is that data governance point.
Mhm.
And for anyone listening, it might be something that they don't totally understand yet or know how they should be using it or why it's important. So do you mind giving an overview of what that is and how it benefits them?
Yeah, absolutely. So data governance, it's comprised of a lot of different pieces, but in a nutshell, it's really who owns your data, where does it live, how do you access it, who's responsible for maintaining it, and what do you do with it. And so those are a lot of really big questions. And so if you think about a highly regulated industry like pharmaceuticals or medical, you need to know who has access to what data, how that data is protected. Um, if you've never been through an audit by the FDA, I highly do not recommend it. Because they're looking for those holes in
Yeah.
your data governance to make sure that data is being protected correctly, to make sure that, if you, Ashley, are going to the doctor, your doctor doesn't have a leak somewhere within their systems, within their database,
Mhm.
that someone who isn't part of that organization could get access to your medical records. In marketing, I feel like there's a lot less emphasis on data governance because we feel like, well, it's not personally identifiable, it's not protected health information. But there does still need to be a data governance plan to say, well, how are you getting the data? How often is it getting updated? What are you doing with it? And so,
Yeah.
data governance is, depending on the kind of industry you're in, it's going to vary in terms of how intense the plan is, but everybody needs some level of it.
Yes. And that makes me think of too, I mean, especially as the time of recording, which is middle of January, I mean, talks about TikTok potentially getting banned and everything that Mark Zuckerberg announced with Meta and everything like that. People are thinking about how they can use stuff outside of social media for their marketing. And that comes to things like grabbing people's email addresses, which comes under that data governance piece. So I think as
Mhm.
marketing channels and strategies and tactics continue to innovate and evolve, I think putting an emphasis on that data governance piece is really important. And I think it's really valuable, the work that you provide, so that way companies know why they need it.
Yeah, exactly. Social media is a really great example, because it's a channel of data that is likely to go away. And so, if marketing teams haven't been thinking about the rest of their channel marketing that doesn't include social media, they're probably already at a disadvantage because, I mean, this could be a whole other sort of like rabbit hole of a conversation to go down in terms of the different social media platforms, but it's becoming more and more unreliable in terms of being able to get in front of the right customers. And that's the whole point of marketing in general, is like you have the awareness. You want to make sure that you're getting in front of the right people. Mediums like podcasting, for example, like what we're doing, getting that content created, put out on channels like YouTube, reusing it in email marketing, having a blog that you own, doing guest posting. Those are going to be the ways in which people can get better results and have more control over the audience that they're reaching.
Absolutely. And another facet of your specialty is the organizational behavior piece. And so I'd love to cover that next and talk about where your work lies within that, and then also how you support companies with it.
I've Yeah, I guess I should say I love puzzles. And I feel like organizational behavior is really a giant puzzle. So it's making sure that you have clear goals, it's making sure that you have the right people to reach those goals, the processes to, do the work, the correct platforms, and the right measurement plans. And so it's actually the way that I've structured it is something that we call the Trust Insights 5P framework, because marketers love alliteration. So it's purpose, people, process, platform, performance. And that's one of the ways that I approach working with companies who are struggling with a good sense of their organizational behaviors, really running them through that 5P framework so that they can say, oh, okay, I'm reaching the right goals, or I've defined the goals clearly in such a way that people know what we're working towards. And then you start to figure out, do we have the right skill sets? Are people satisfied with the work we're doing? I was talking with someone, a prospective client earlier today, and they were talking about how they're really proud of the culture that they've built, that it's people first. In the same breath, they were talking about how they want to be an AI first company. And one of the things that I'll be working with them on is, well, which is it? Is it
Yeah.
people or is it AI? Like you can have both things, but you can't have both things first. And so and that's a lot of how I work with the companies, is trying to figure out, where do the people fit in? The software, the shiny objects, that's great. You still need people to do it.
Oh my gosh, I love that point that you brought up, because I feel like that's what I've been saying a lot in regards to AI and marketing, is that, I mean, I own a marketing agency and that's what people always say is like, are you scared of AI? Like it taking away your clients? And I'm like, well, no, because you can have something like Chat GPT, but you still need a person to use Chat GPT to put in the inputs to get the captions to come out. So if there's no person who's actually doing that, then no, the job is not at risk.
Well, and you need that human judgment to make sure that things are coming out correctly because, as you know, generative AI can hallucinate wildly.
Yeah.
My co-founder was putting together a document today that he sent to me, and I was like, "Did you read this? This is wildly incorrect. This can't see the light of day."
Yeah. And you make a great point there too, where like you're always going to need that human quality assurance to be able to ensure that everything that you're putting out there is something that you can truly back up and that you can truly endorse and believe in
Hmm.
fully.
Yeah, it's still your reputation is the thing that you have control over. And so being too reliant on AI could potentially, damage things down the line.
Absolutely. And it makes me think too how I think when companies incorporate AI, and I'm sure you see this all the time, but it makes me think about how companies who incorporate AI, it then innovates for them in other ways. Like it might open up a new job title that they might not have ever had before, a new job position that allows for more creativity. And so I think it's really interesting to think about that too, how AI isn't taking jobs away, but actually creating more jobs in a sense.
It is. It's changing the way that we think about how we're working. And so, one of the things that I'm responsible for at my company is the finances and the admin because we're a small company, so somebody has to do it. And allowing AI to help me do those kinds of tasks, the repeatable tasks, the mundane tasks, the things that I just really don't enjoy, has allowed me more time to think creatively about what's next for the company. Or here's all the foundational pieces that we have. What does that mean? How do we repackage it? It's just given me more creativity, more time to think about those things that I otherwise just would have been bogged down in paperwork.
Yes, I love that. It's like giving you the time. I think it also helps to remove like the tedious stuff about your job or the stuff that you just genuinely don't enjoy that can be automated. Why not create space for the tasks and responsibilities and projects that you love doing and get rid of the stuff that you don't enjoy doing?
I was working with a client, and one of the ways that they're using generative AI is so they have, hundreds of their own clients. And one of their asks is creating social posts. And with each social post, the creative team has to create an image. And so think about thousands of images getting generated every day, or somebody physically going through, a Getty Images or something, trying to find something. It's so much faster if you can just use generative AI to create all of those images. You can get back to the work that really matters.
Yes, I think that's a great point too. And one question that I've been thinking about as in regards to AI and companies who use it is that, and this probably depends on the industry, but do you think it's important for companies to disclose to their end users or to their customers that they use AI?
I do. I think that there's going to be varying degrees of what that disclosure looks like.
Mm,
But I do. I'm someone who I always think honesty is the best policy. It's in our core values that we are as transparent as we can possibly be. We don't black box anything. So we disclose probably too often how when we're using AI. So it's like every single blog post, this much of the content was created using AI, this much was human generated. That might be overkill, but it also might become the norm. I don't
mm.
think it's a bad idea just to even include maybe in your, about us, like we use generative AI to do the following things. People may not care, but then you're getting ahead of when it's likely going to become some kind of a regulation that says you have to disclose it. And then you can say, well, I've always been doing it. So, I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about all the times that I didn't disclose it.
that's a great suggestion. One thing that I also think about with AI and disclosing this to customers for anyone who owns a marketing agency or works in marketing is that it makes me wonder if clients would be like, well, if you're using AI, why is your price so high? Because you're not always using the human hours to do that stuff. And I don't necessarily agree with that standpoint, but I'm curious to hear your perspective on that as well. And if you think conversations like that will be happening, or if you've heard from your clients, if their clients have mentioned to them something along those lines.
I mean, that's a really solid point. Like that conversation is happening and it's happening a lot. And I think, it's there's a lot of truth to it in terms of, well, if AI is doing the work, why am I paying you? It's really the responsibility of the company using AI to disclose what that actually means, like how much more human thinking can actually go into building these reusable prompts. Like anybody can create a mediocre prompt and generate like hundreds of pieces of kind of flat content. But to get really, really good customized content or results, there is a lot of expertise that goes into actually using AI. It's a whole new skill set. And it's
Yeah.
something that majority of us are struggling with. We're giving it, pretty flat prompts saying like, you know, today you are a CEO of a management firm. I need you to write a piece of content around what SEO is going to look like in 2025. That's a really weak prompt and I'm going to get really weak content, but anybody can do it. And yeah, my client shouldn't pay me to do that. What they should be paying me to do is use all of my institutional knowledge of what SEO actually is, how to use generative AI, and then how to polish the writing that comes out of it. It's really just a good first draft. So they're not losing any value. If anything, they're getting more value because I then have more time to critically think about the thing that they're asking me to do.
Yes, that's a great point. And I also think about too, just the cost of doing business. I mean, you're obviously paying for high quality softwares or whatever it might be, whatever AI tool you're paying for to use your clients, and anything that's great isn't going to be free or isn't going to
Mhm.
be necessarily low cost. And so that's something to keep in mind as well with pricing and everything is that like you are paying for really great tools that you trust and that you stand behind to use on the work that you're doing for your clients.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And so, with that, as I mentioned, the recording of this episode is during the middle of January. I'm curious to hear where you see AI going in the remainder of this year, or even some new trends or really cool things that you see happening personally just in the work that you've been doing.
I'm seeing a couple of things. Some are positive, some are negative. I think that there are people who are becoming too over reliant on AI to do the work for them. And so I think that that's a trend that unfortunately is going to continue. And we're going to see the results of that. We're going to see the output feel really disingenuous, feel very low quality. And I think that it's going to become a hard habit to break. It's actually something that
Hmm.
a little bit of a trap that I fell into because I've created Katie GPT and the version of me that lives within generative AI. And I'm like, oh, well, if it's all me, then I can just have it write the content for me. And I realized, thankfully, not too far into the cycle, that I was becoming too reliant on my digital twin to do the work for me. And it was just still mediocre. And I was like, something's not quite right. So I feel like one of the trends is we will see that over reliance on AI come back to bite some people. On the other side of it, people who are really giving the time and space to train the models regularly, not just once, but in a sort of a maintenance cycle, will find really, really good results. They'll be able to create things called AI agents. They'll be able to have those true digital twins stand in for them because the models will be consistently fed new information and tuned and tweaked. And so I feel like people are going to fall into one of two camps. The
Yeah.
I fell into the mediocre, I can't really use it, I can't figure it out. And then the I've really kind of cracked the code on it. So now it's really become my best friend.
Hmm. And you bring up such an interesting and important point, which is the idea or process of being able to train AI so that it is like that agent of you and that you have been able to ensure that it's work that you yourself would have come up with because of all of that that you've done. But could you talk a little bit more about what that actually entails or what that means for someone listening who's like, I'm using some type of generative AI and I know I need to train it better, but how do I actually train it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where, I go back to the 5P framework and really
Mhm.
defining what it is you want to do with generative AI. And that could be your big lofty goal, or that could be that one very specific task. Um, the the place where you're going to focus is the process. So how do I consistently give AI new data? What does that look like? How often do I need to do it? How often is the data available to give to it? What kind of feedback am I giving this particular model? Am I building something custom? Am I doing something one off? And so, really, just understanding your intention with it first. And that's going to help you figure out how often. So, if, for example, you have a client that they want you to do weekly reporting for them and you know that generative AI is going to get you 70% of the way there, then you want to make sure that you are at least weekly updating the model with new information, new techniques, best practices, your writing, the client's writing, what their goals are, asking the client, have your goals changed? What has changed in your campaigns? Giving it as much information as possible is going to give you the best outputs.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important reminder that you share there is it's not just like a set it and forget it. In order to get
Right.
what you want out of it and ensure that it's quality work, you have to consistently put in the work. As with anything in business, really, if you want something to work out for you, you have to consistently work at it.
Well, we kind of, poorly equate it to working out. I
Hmm.
would love to go to the gym once and have that work and be done. But in reality, I have to go a few times a week, probably 4 or 5 times a week, more than 5 minutes, maybe more than walking on the treadmill at 2 miles an hour. I have to actually do the work in order to see really good results.
Hmm.
And as I start to plateau in any one area, I need to increase the intensity to keep seeing results. And it's very much the same thing with generative AI is it's not a set it and forget it. The one time is not going to do you any favors.
Right. Absolutely. And if there was one thing that you wish people would know about you or about AI or about your company that you think is really important to remember, what would you say that would be?
Don't skip the foundational work. It is I should probably stop downplaying it like, oh, it's the uninteresting stuff, it's the unsexy stuff. But the foundational work, making sure you have your requirements, your processes, do your audits, that work up front is going to set you up for so much success with scalability and growth and agility and allow you to introduce new technologies such as generative AI so much more seamlessly and with so much lower risk that you're going to wonder why you just didn't do this in the first place. So
Mhm.
that's the soapbox that I am always on is do the foundational work before you even touch the shiny object. Don't even look at it. Pretend it's not even there. If you don't have a solid foundation, it doesn't matter.
Yes, because it's almost like the idea of throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it sticks. Like you're just
Yeah.
free, like willy-nilly, whatever you want to call it. You're just kind of
Well,
going
and now
at it
you
with
have
no
sauce all
intention.
over your wall, and now you have to clean the wall because you threw stuff at it. Like that's not fun for anybody.
Exactly. Katie, as we get closer towards the end of this episode, I love to ask our guests what their favorite local businesses are to support. I have like a giant list now of places I need to go to and try. And so I'm really interested to hear what your favorite places are and where you like to frequent.
One of my favorite places is Briggs Nursery. So it's in Attleboro.
Hmm.
Um, I I could like spend hours in a garden center, and I just love walking around. There's just a very calm feeling of going there, looking at all the little plants. I have plants all over my house. So Briggs is definitely one of my favorite local businesses. Because I am a pet owner, there's a place called Vet Meds in Franklin, where, they're not part of a chain, they're not a bigger corporation. It's a small business and they are just so friendly. They are so helpful and knowledgeable. So those are two of my favorite small businesses. Anything with plants and anything with animals are always going to be, you know, very high on my list.
Can't go wrong with those. Katie, this has been a really interesting episode, and I've really appreciated having the opportunity to have you on the show. And now I'd love to give you the time and space to share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect further.
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Katie Robbert. It's just my name. Uh, that's Robbert with two B's, Robbert. And then you can find me on our company, trustinsights.ai. Get all the information there. You can find our podcast, our newsletter, our YouTube channel, all that good stuff. Um, and then on podcasts like this one, Ashley.
Yes, I love it. And I will link to all those places in the show notes that way our listeners can click through and connect with you from there. But thank you so much again for being a guest on today's podcast.
Thank you for having me.